Welcome to Lost and Found and Rewound. I am Chris Lost.
I'm Found Jim.
And I am Rick Rewound.
We open the show, every show, with a theme song that's a collaboration between the three of us. And I realize that that's the only thing that the three of us have ever done together musically. But Jim and I collaborated on a song called Splode 30 years.
I remember that song.
30 years ago. You remember that song?
I remember the name.
Uh-huh.
And that Rick and I collaborated on a song Cassidy cover 3 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember Splode, Jim?
I do. I don't think I could play it right now, but I don't.
Well, here we go.
I don't think I'd
1, 2, 3.
It was a beautiful song. The music was beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, there's even more than, we did several songs. Well, a group of us that summer did some recording. There's some interesting things.
For the Trippin' People was the name of the recordings.
I remember that.
I'd like to open with a speech if you guys will let me do that.
That's a good
All right, I have to go to the bathroom anyways. Sorry to undermine. It's probably going to be very serious, right? I'm making light of this. And
this
is
is not serious. This is not.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's an apology, so I don't know if that's serious or not.
Okay.
So, I wanted to preface this speech by saying I'm not a critic. I'm a person who truly expresses my subjective opinion in the moment. Sometimes that's a reaction that sometimes is well thought through. In every case, it's just my opinion. So please take all of my opinions I state on this podcast with a grain of salt. I guess this is more of a disclaimer than an apology now that I think about it. With that, I want to offer an apology to the band Soul Asylum. When I was completing the assignment that Rick gave me to parse the entire Soul Asylum lyric catalog for references to trains, I listened to a ton of Soul Asylum, and all of the albums I listened to were awesome. So while you were out, awesome, end to end. And I recently criticized that album, so I apologize for that. Clam Dip and Other Delights, incredible. I've forgotten how good that album is. And
Is that the song with the Artificial Heart song?
Yeah, Artificial Heart's on
Artificial Heart. There's a video of that, right? I it's been like 25 or 30 years since I've seen the video, but I remember it being.
There's
funny.
one for P9. That was the big video that I think did pretty. I mean, we've got played on 120 minutes or whatever. And then Take It to the Root might be my favorite Soul Asylum song. Do you remember that song? It's kind of like a R&B, really fast R&B tune. And then Hang Time, I'd criticized before, but it's end-to-end solid. The song
You had me completely doubting myself, but I didn't
No.
go back and listen. I'll have to listen to that record.
And then Endless Farewell is a beautiful song that stays true to the spirit of Soul Asylum. And then I go on here to say I've never written a song that would be nearly as good as probably the worst Soul Asylum song, so I have no right to criticize them. And as a penance for criticizing them, I listened to their most recent album, which just came out. And while it didn't sound like the Soul Asylum that I hold near and dear to my heart, if somebody had told me it was just, hey, listen to this album by this songwriter that I really enjoy, I would have listened to it and probably liked it. It was pretty damn good. So I'm sorry. I don't even think I am good enough to apologize to Soul Asylum, let alone criticize them. And then I realized that you guys might actually know them or may have played with them at some point too. So here I am criticizing some compatriots of yours. So
We did play with them a few times.
Yeah. It was I think the second show I played with the band. That was,
Wow.
pretty amazing. I was like, wow. I was like, yeah, we played at the, my second show was at the
Marquette?
The Student Union. Yeah. At
Yeah.
Marquette,
Oh, okay. Yeah, that show. Yeah.
Milwaukee.
So pre-Fish Tank,
What's that?
they used to put the drums in like a fish tank.
Oh, Sneeze Guard. That we called it the Sneeze Guard. It might have been right around that time.
God, I don't remember.
I can't remember.
Because they eventually ditched that. I remember seeing them later, and they would do like a 45-minute acoustic set. And I was like, uh-oh, is that what they're going to do instead of
Yeah.
the fish tank, and then they came out and did like an hour and a half of blaringly loud rock songs. So I wasn't quite sure how they were caring for his hearing, but it was
Yeah.
a great
I think
show.
it was probably earplugs. He probably just got some custom earplugs. Yeah. So, what's his name? The guitarist, Dan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dan?
Yeah, Murphy.
Dan
Yeah,
Murphy.
Dan Murphy. He was the one that we talked to the most. He was the most outgoing member of the band, at least for us. So that was, I always remember talking to him.
Yeah, I remember like looking
He's not in the band anymore.
backstage that show. Like it was it was the student union, so we were upstairs in some kind of big cushy room, sort of. But I remember looking out. It was on the second floor, and I think it was Carl and who's the drummer? I forgot the drummer's name.
Carl, yeah.
No, that's the bass player.
The drummer's name.
Oh.
Grant, right?
Grant, yeah.
Was there a
I
Grant?
think so.
I think
Anyways,
that's right.
two of them were. Yeah, it was like. It was the.
We're
I
both
think
gonna
it was
have to-
It may have been different.
I'm going to start writing my apology.
Yeah. It was. Yeah. It was. They were looking out the window and oh, look over there. They were trying. There was some guy on the roof of a liquor store across the street. But nothing happened though. That was all. It was like they were trying to figure out what he was doing up there. That's all I remember
That's great.
from that show.
Jim is like my memory. I have, for me, basically that 10 or 15 years of touring is it's just all one giant black painted club. It's just all one big giant event, and I have no detailed memory of anything. And Jim remembers everything, so I don't need to.
There you go. Yeah, that's why I always
can
keep
just-
him
yeah.
around. He's always got
I
a good story.
I just sort of start.
If you imagine like heaven, but like indie rock heaven, basically it would kind of look like maybe CBGB's, but with more, like maybe painted a little nicer, and then like 1,000 indie rockers all playing. That's kind of what my memory of touring is. It's kind of like
Yeah.
not quite rock and roll heaven. It's more like indie rock heaven.
Sure. Yeah, it's like every night of my life from not touring, but just going to an indie rock club from 1989 till 1996. Jesus. Soul Asylum drummers since 1983, Dave Perner.
Oh, I forgot about that. Was that when they were called Loud Fast Rules though?
Maybe. And then
Yeah.
it's got, this is weird. It says Michael Bland since 2004, Pat Morley 1993 to 1984, and Ian Mussington. They're missing something. 1998 to 2001. That's not.
They're
all-
missing
all
the main guy.
drummers. Grant Young, 1984 to 19.
Yeah.
Wait for 1984 to 1995, 11 years.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Classic lineup.
Speaking of Grant Young, I thought, and we talked about how they got rid of their drummer for, I think, in the horse they rode in on. I thought their drummer was their secret sauce. He was the one who would pull out all those crazy time signatures and beats, and he was great. He was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was an indie rock drummer, and like I said, that's the Michael Beinhorn trick. Is you got to get somebody who can play to the click, and yeah, you don't have to edit, because back then you'd have to edit the drummer on tape. You couldn't do it on a computer like now. It doesn't matter. You can be the world's worst drummer, and they'll just chop you up and fix it. Whereas back then, if you weren't like clockwork, then that would involve a huge amount of tape editing. And you wouldn't have a hit without that clockwork drumming.
So the producer was just lazy, is what you're saying,
Well,
or going for the hit.
yeah, I mean, that's why you hire a producer on that level, is because
Yeah.
they have a series of rules that they follow, and then lightning hit when they were following those rules one time, and so then for the next 5 years, people hire them to do the exact same thing, even though it's still all they're doing is standing outside with a iron pole waiting for a lightning storm to hit. It's not. That's my view of sort of a lot of producers is they kind of stumble into a hit, and then they kind of ride it for a while, and then it's over.
To support that theory, I mean, I've been buying a lot of equipment, or we bought a lot of equipment, and we're trying to make like the studio sound really good. And then I go back and listen to albums that I like, and every once in a while I'll come across a song that like I absolutely love, and I listen to it. The production is garbage, just terrible.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, a good song is a good song. You don't need producers don't make good songs. Good songs make good songs.
That said, this engineer, Mac, and he kind of became a producer. I was not aware of him, a German guy, but I start looking around because basically I really like that. And that's not the first Billy Squier record. What's the big hit Billy Squier record? That's right at that moment of kind of the peak of analog recording. And so this guy Mac did, also recorded some Queen stuff. And you start listening to certain Queen songs and Billy Squier songs that have the heavy guitars from late, like 1979, 1980, and it's all this guy Mac, this German producer. It's amazing. I just got obsessed with him. But he was also an engineer. That's the thing, is he was not just a producer. He started out as an engineer, and so I think that's the difference. And yeah, he was able to get amazing sounds with bands that were probably close to self-producing.
Is Lonely as the Night, was that a Mac producer? I remember
Yeah.
those songs all had like great use of the room. Like he delayed the room mics in such a way that just made the guitars sound massive. And then those songs would open with those riffs.
Everybody
just sound
wants
huge.
you, or every isn't
Yeah.
it like
Yeah.
whatever.
Oh yeah.
And so there's just like, again, on YouTube, there's like just a short clip of him working on some sequencer part. Like it's going, and I'm trying to remember the name of the studio worked in. It's kind of famous. It's in Berlin, right? No, Munich.
Yeah.
It's not Hansa. Oh no, it's not Hansa. I think it's in Munich. But it's like him just working on this synthesizer part that's for that electronic or kind of synth pop Queen record, which isn't good, which I had never really listened to. They kind of tacked on Under Pressure onto it later. Or Under Pressure, they recorded Under Pressure with David Bowie, but then they made this record after another one bites the dust, So they went harder into kind of dance music, but it was like him just working on a sequence, and it just sounded amazing. And I went back and listened to, what is it called? Hot Space? What is that Queen record called?
I don't know.
It's not a good Queen record, but there's a what is it? Dragon Attack? No, that's on the game.
The game, yeah.
The game, yeah. But you start listening and you hear those guitar sounds and the drum sounds on the rocking songs. So basically, the Brian May songs, it's like, oh wow, this guy is the one who made this sound and got this right. And then realizing, oh, it's the same guy who did the Billy Squier records.
So to review, a producer is the most important part of recording an album.
It depends. It really depends, I think.
Just going back to my speech on opinions. Rick, what have you watched since the last time we've met?
So I had mentioned the Duck You Sucker, the James Coburn spaghetti western, and then I think I've gotten into some kind of James Coburn sort of. It's the streaming services are just feeding me James Coburn films, but the one I watched was called Harry in Your Pocket.
Oh yeah.
Which, have you seen that?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah, I'd never heard of it. About a pickpocket. Michael Sarrazin is in it. That's another 60s, 70s actor that completely dropped off the face of the earth. What's the older actor who playing the older pickpocket? It was really interesting.
Yeah, I saw it I rented it a few years ago. I exactly that. I was like looking up James Coburn movies for some reason. I can't remember why, but I came across that and why. I remember I didn't believe that those two were that streetwise. The kids, the young people that he takes under his wing to train as pickpockets. Isn't that kind of the story? And they seemed a little too squeaky clean. Like kind of college kids, or I can't remember.
And I'm trying to remember, is the woman the woman from the Dolphin movie with George C. Scott? Is that who the woman is? She's the woman that he dumped what's her name for, and married her. I think that's who the woman. Oh no, I watched another movie that had. What I'm looking at my list though, and I don't have it here. Maybe it is her. Day of the Dolphin, right?
Yeah.
I should look that up.
Mhm.
Maybe I'll check it right now. You can edit this, Chris.
Oh, you know I will.
So Trish Van Devere is who was in Day of the Dolphin. Let's see if she's in. Yeah, she's the female lead in Harry in Your Pocket. Yeah, and she married George C. Scott. What else did I watch? I just watched this the other day. Was Black Sunday?
Oh yeah,
The,
the Super Bowl movie.
John, Super Bowl movie with John Frankenheimer. Directed it with Bruce Dern as the crazy blimp or dirigible. Is it a blimp? The Goodyear blimp is a blimp.
Yeah.
Yes, the blimp pilot who's
Is there a difference between a blimp and a dirigible?
Well,
Chris.
Is that-
So disappointing.
a blimp
Guys,
and a Zeppelin.
You're the educated ones. A blimp is what?
a blimp and a Zeppelin. A Zeppelin is like an airship. I think it's like a
Well,
rigid.
A Zeppelin is a dirigible. They just don't call them Zeppelins because I believe it's called a dirigible because they don't want to call it a Zeppelin, or they didn't want to call rigid airships. So yeah,
Okay.
rigid airships are dirigibles or Zeppelins.
And they have a
blimp.
a frame, like the
Right,
film
so-
of the Hindenburg going up and burning. You can see the metal frame. So blimps don't have that metal frame. Like the Goodyear blimp is just a balloon.
Oh,
So they're kind of have some kind of structure, but they're not light steel frame.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
It's just
Why don't you know this stuff, Chris?
I'd like to know if the people who listen to this knew that. Like, I want to know what percentage of our audience
Knows the difference between a blimp and a dirigible?
Yeah, I want to know what side I'm on. Like, I don't
You're
know.
on the wrong side of the blimp.
I know that.
Um,
I know I'm on the wrong side of the blimp dirigible knowledge fence.
Black Sunday, I don't know. It's probably the best deranged Bruce Dern performance. I don't think it's a great movie. There's that great scene where they test the sort of firing mechanism that shoots out all the stuff in the barn, and it pokes little holes evenly. Like he's wound up murdering someone to test it, right? And he's just looking at the dispersion of the bullet holes throughout this barn and marveling at them, and goes on this insane 10-minute monologue about it. And it's it's got great moments, but
I remember.
I don't know if I'd ever seen it.
It was a CBS late night movie. That's how I remember. And I don't even remember any of it, to be honest. I thought it was they were just going to crash a bomb blimp into the Super Bowl. I didn't realize there was bullets involved.
Things happened, and then they wound up just crashing. Yeah, he just wound up trying to crash the blimp into the Super Bowl. There is a scene though where the guy says, well, first off, Robert Shaw is in it too. And Robert Shaw's, what is this Super Bowl? And that's not a Robert Shaw accent. He has the Robert Shaw accent. But, and then he says, we're going to have to cancel it. And the guy goes, the Super Bowl will not be canceled. That would be like saying we're going to cancel every sporting event in the world.
Oh.
And I got a little chill.
By the way, I found my notes for the episode that we were going to tape just before this global event happened, and one of the notes was I was going to quiz you both on the Super Bowl. So let's take this moment right now to do that. Here's the quiz: who won the Super Bowl?
it's Kansas City, right?
Oh, good job.
Yeah.
Did you know, Rick?
This year?
Last
There've been 40 of them, right?
Kansas City has won
last,
a little more than that.
the last Super
How
Bowl
many?
ever.
50?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Kansas City's won 2 Super Bowls now. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew that because I never talked to you about it because I figured you were probably pretty happy about that. But I remember it was like, oh,
Well, I'm not a Kansas City fan. I'm a
right,
Titans fan.
yeah, I wasn't sure. Yeah, I knew it was complicated. You and football.
It is. You do remember that, right? Well, good job. I'm glad you
Was
got
that the whole?
Ding ding
was,
ding. Yeah, I got 1 point.
So
was that the whole
Is that-
quiz?
here's that was it. But hey, I've got one for you, Rick. Can you name a team that has won a Super Bowl?
The New York Jets.
Very good. That's true. I don't know how many times I know they've won once at least. Do you know who their quarterback was?
The Joe Namath.
Look at that. Rick's
Am I right?
suddenly become a sports chronologist.
That reminds me of the movie. I remember seeing this on TV when I was a really little kid. What is the movie called? The Joe Namath movie, where he's like a rebel motorcycle guy. And my childhood memory is that he walks into a grocery store. I think this is the opening sequence of the film. He walks into a grocery store, like opens up a bag of bread and takes out 2 pieces of bread, and then walks to the lunch meat area and pulls off like a package of bologna and takes out the bologna, and then goes finds some mustard and squirts mustard on it and eats the sandwich. And that, I must have been 4 or 5 when I saw this. I was like, it blew me away. It was like, how is this happening? How could a person do this? How could somebody walk into a store and not pay and make a sandwich? It really, really freaked me out as a small child.
Wow.
Joe Namath. Yeah.
That's amazing. It's a testimony to what good children you were. I think at that age, I had already stolen my first sandwich. So I would have been like, how could you be so brazen? Don't you need a big coat? Or what's the approach here? I guess if you ate the sandwich before you walked out, I mean, that's fair game, right? And if you go to a grocery store, everything you eat in the store is free. It's just the stuff you're trying to leave with.
That's right.
That's the issue.
I'm wondering if the reference of, like the Big Lebowski where he has the milk on his beard, right, on his mustache, is a reference to that movie. It's entirely possible.
But yeah, to be fair, he pays for it. He opens.
He does?
He's checking the expiration dates and drinks the half and half or whatever cream when he's first his White Russians, and and then I think that's all he's buying. He writes a check for like 59 cents, and it's just the carton. It's already open. He's got the milk mustache.
So he's already drank it. He's not stealing. Okay. Wow, it's probably because I have Joe Namath in my mind.
What else have you seen? What else did you consume?
I watched Escape from New York with my 11-year-old, and he was very angry because I said, let's watch a movie we'll both like. And then I started watching it, and he said, I don't want to watch this. And I said, "What? I want to watch it." And he said, "I thought we were going to watch a movie that we would both like." But he watched the whole thing.
And he didn't.
yeah,
he
so
didn't
it was-
like it.
He grudgingly liked it. He's talked about it, but he just felt the core of it was unfair in that I made him watch it and he didn't want to.
Oh,
So, but I think it worked. I think it sunk in.
it's rated R, right?
It is. It's not. It's a pretty soft R. Yeah.
Right. There's no.
It's more like
there's
a-
no nudity in
it's
it. I don't think.
No. Yeah. I don't think so. And it's more like a contemporary PG-13.
Right.
I would say it's probably a template for a PG-13. I watched a documentary about Connie Plank, actually an engineer producer. So that was another person, German. He worked with Kraftwerk and Can and Neu. Not Can. I don't think he worked with Holger Zuke from Can. I don't know if he actually did anything with Can directly. Engineered that first Devo record, right? So Brian Eno was the producer, but Connie Plank was the engineer. Houdini, he produced the Houdini. You remember that rap group Houdini?
Oh.
They're in the documentary.
Wow.
So is the
But it was really
lesson
great.
that the engineer is important, but the producer is not?
My philosophy is if you're going to have a producer, it should be a producer engineer. That's my advice to musicians is don't have a person who is simply a producer, who is an idea person, because that's basically adding another artist into the mix. Whereas a producer engineer, right? Someone who knows how to engineer, started out as an engineer, and has kind of gotten the mantle of producer, so they know how to get sounds, or they're a translator more than just a person who wants to interfere with your vision and put some of their vision in your vision, right? The typically producer engineers, not typically, but I would say you're more likely to get your vision translated into the studio by a producer engineer rather than just a producer, because there's going to have to be an engineer helping the producer get all the sounds.
Yeah, and they say Rick Rubin, his secret sauce was that he had this tremendous engineer that worked with him the whole time. That's how all those great
what's his
records
name
are made.
from Bark Market, right? What's his name? Dave Sardi, I think, is at least this band Bark Market, the guitar player from this band Bark Market, just really was able to had some great guitar sounds in the 90s, early 90s, late 80s, and I think he did a lot of Rick Rubin stuff. Last thing I watched I just watched this last night, Recorder, the Marion Stokes Project, about this African-American communist former librarian who wound up marrying a very wealthy man, and she started videotaping the news, the 24-hour news cycle. So interviews, sort of talks about her early life, and then interviews with the people who, she was very wealthy, also bought a huge amount of Apple stock, was obsessed with computers and Apple, and basically leveraged her husband's wealth into enormous wealth by buying Apple stock, but she would have, 4 to 8 VCRs running constantly. And so she started recording, I think, Nightline. She had VCRs before then, but she started recording Nightline. And then when CNN went on the air, she started recording CNN 24/7 and was recording like MSNBC, CNN, Fox, and then local news. I can't remember. Was she in Philadelphia? I can't remember where she lived. But basically for 35 years was running VCRs constantly, recording this, and it's some of the only documentation of a lot of this stuff.
Really? So it was actually a service.
Yeah, so it's kind of about that whole thing where she basically, her and her husband became these recluses, but she and the people who worked for her, she was responsible for a few of the VCRs, and then, if they went out, they'd put in an 8-hour VHS tape, and then, she'd know, machine number 3 is about to run out, we got to get home, and stuff like that. It was amazing. But
SLP.
Yeah,
she'd set the SLP.
Yeah, exactly. And so it wound up all going to the Internet Archives. They've gotten it, but it was that kind of thing. So she started, basically her collection started with the Iranian hostage crisis in 1979, and went through, she died the day of the Newton massacre. What was the name of the grade school? She wasn't alert, but it's really that I shouldn't talk about it, but that end, the part where they talk about the day she died, and everything, it's really powerful. And also talking, so she was an activist, from the 60s, and a communist originally, and so from before then, like the 50s, and so she saw this as a public service and part of basically look at the way the media is talking about this event, and compared to this event, it was all about keeping an eye on the media and recording it and documenting it, because she had a powerful idea that, this is changing the world, and it's rewriting the world, and it's why we perceive obvious, it's all that obvious stuff, but she thought it was important to document it all. And everyone's assumption is, CNN has, all their stuff archived, right? No, they don't. So she actually did document the 24-hour news cycle. And so, they said she'd have something like 4 machines running for most of the time. And then if it was a big event, like 9/11 or something, she'd go up to 8 machines, right? And so it was interesting.
Was Sandy Hook, was that when she died?
Sandy Hook
okay.
is,
interesting.
she died that day.
And then the Iranian hostage crisis, that's when Ben Affleck saved the hostages? Is that?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. I got it. Got my history straight, at least. That's amazing. I mean, I bet a lot of people have used that footage, right? Is it available for use in our documentaries
they're-
using it?
They're transferring it now, I guess.
Jim, what have you consumed since we last were together?
I didn't really finish much. I started watching. Oh, there's this movie called Patience After Sebald, which is like a documentary almost, or it's about this writer. My mom saw it and she liked it, so it sounded interesting. But it's I'd never heard of this writer, but he's German and he lived in England and died of, I don't know, several years ago, but died kind of young, I think. But sounds like he would have won the Nobel Prize in literature if he had lived. Or a lot of people really love his books, but they're very highbrow, and I have a feeling, it sounded interesting like the book, but I have a feeling a lot of it would just be like, I have no idea what he's talking about. But the movie was interesting, even though I didn't finish it. But it was, I think it's by the guy who did. You had the Radiohead documentary. Was it meeting people is easy? Is that what it's called?
Is easy.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it's that guy did this, but it's from a couple years ago. But it's like, it's kind of a heavy. I just couldn't get into it. But if I was in a different mood, I think I'll try and watch it again. But if you're in the mood for something heavy, literary, and people talking about how much they love this book, I don't know. Sounds like a strange book, but it's called like the Rings of Saturn, I think, is his book. But I did not finish it. The same thing. I started watching Medium Cool. I didn't finish, which I had, to be fair, I've seen that before. So, but I had seen Medium Cool is by Haskell Wexler, and I think I saw it at
Robert Forster was in it, right? He just passed away
Oh.
recently.
Okay, yeah. And what's his name? Peter Bonners from
Right.
the Bob Newhart show. Jerry, the dentist, is in. He's like I think he's the cameraman. He's the news cameraman, but it takes place in Chicago during 1968, the riots, and it's well, the last time when I actually saw the whole movie was 20 years ago, whatever. It was at Ebert Fest again.
Eberfest, right? Yeah, and Haskell Wexler was there. Yeah.
That was really cool. He interviewed him and everything, and I started watching that again, and it seemed very relevant to. It seemed like kind of like to today. It was like not a lot has changed in a way, or it just seemed very current. And the 1968 stuff was like in Chicago.
Oh,
was
yeah.
Seemed. I think it was a little crazier than that. I don't want to compare the two, but it just was like 50 years ago. But it didn't seem very dated at all.
Felt, yeah.
But
Speaking,
Right.
what is Medium Cool about? Is it about riots? by
it's
any
about a
chance, or-
newsman. They're like, since I didn't watch it again, it's been a while since I actually saw the whole thing. But they're, it's about kind of like the media. He's like a newsman, and it takes place in Chicago in 1968. The riots at the Democratic Convention, and Haskell Wexler filmed a lot of it on the streets, like with the actors. It's fiction, but they were wandering around downtown Chicago, like when this was all happening, like during the riots, basically. And he's filming the actors, these, fictional characters walking around, interacting with people and, the police and everything. And it's all real. It's just they were wandering around while all this stuff was happening. And he was just filming the actors in the midst of reality. So it's very interesting in that respect.
Yeah, so kind of using documentary methods, but to tell a narrative, sort of semi-fictional story. But yeah, it's happening during the summer of 1968 in Chicago,
And there's
during the riots.
There's
So,
like
yeah, they
footage of
weave
them, in Grant Park,
reality.
like where I remember, the old, since we all grew up there, is like the old band shell. I just remember the old band shell in Grant Park, and there's some footage that's, I think it's like when there's some stuff happening, there's kind of panic or people are running around, and it was like you can see a shot of the stage and there's a bunch of amps up there, and I remember hearing about that later. Was the MC5 were supposed to play And
They
I
were
was
they
like,
were
"Oh,
the only
that's-"
band that showed up. There were
Yeah.
supposed to be a
Oh.
bunch of bands playing, and that's the story. Is the MC5 were the only, like, all the other bands that were supposed to play at the Democratic National Convention wussed
Oh.
out when they heard that there were riots and everything like that. And the MC5 were like, "We're going. What do you mean not going? That's even more of a reason to play." Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's in this movie. It might be just, I can't remember if I'm combining different things. Maybe it was just some news footage I saw, but I'm sure it's in this movie. But there's some shot, and I remember seeing the stage and all these amps. And it's like, oh, I bet that's MC5's amps. But it was like, but yeah, they never got to play. They cleared the park.
That's awesome. I noticed that on the What's Up Doc episode, of course, you know, we record these episodes probably a year ago, but on the What's Up Doc episode, we're talking about Catherine Bigelow, and I bring up
yeah.
Detroit. I think Detroit would be a good film to watch in the current age. It's a great movie. I really liked it. It's one of her best.
I've been trying to, I've got some new little synthesizers. I've been trying to learn those. Trying to get my head around.
So you taught
Yeah.
yourself keyboards?
Kind of, yeah. If you could call it that, yeah. It's like typing, hunt and peck typing, yeah.
So do you play chords?
Well,
or do you play
lately
notes?
just notes because, yeah,
Or both?
some of the synthesizer stuff, the new stuff I've gotten has been all mono synths. So,
And I may not have taken piano lessons, but I think chords are made out of notes, aren't they, Chris?
I don't know. Are they? I don't think so. I'd have to go look that up. I just put my fingers on the strings where the guy tells me and then makes a noise. That's all I know.
Roy Clark, where Roy Clark's Big Note Songbook tells you.
There was something where they put stickers on the fretboard, right?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah, I think that was part of the Big Note Songbook. I borrowed somebody's Roy Clark's Big Note Songbook, but I didn't use the stickers, but it was useful.
I don't all that music stuff. That's a little advanced for me. I use my guitar like a controller. I run it through a bunch of pedals. I hit it and it makes a noise, and sometimes it's a good noise. Most of the time it's a bad noise.
You're like Brian Eno. You're more of a producer.
How dare you, sir?
Hey, Brian Eno's cool, right?
Oh, I love Brian Eno, yeah. If you're calling me Brian Eno, I'll take that. If you're calling me a producer, well, I'm not even good enough to be a producer. But I watched 2 Jason Robards films. Crimson
Yep.
Tide was the first one. He's in it.
Wow.
He's uncredited. He was in it for all of like 30 seconds, I think.
Did you watch Quick
And then-
Change?
I did,
Oh, okay.
and it was awesome. Saw Boomerang with Eddie Murphy.
Hmm.
Good movie. Halle Berry, Eddie Murphy, Halle Berry, and Robin Givens. Incredible all-star cast, actually. Pretty incredible. Then I watched Safety Not Guaranteed.
No.
You guys seen that?
Is that the one about the time travel?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did see that.
Aubrey Plaza and one of the Duplass brothers.
Right.
It's great. And then The Hunt, a recent film, kind of like Most Dangerous Game.
Oh yeah. So that was my thought. Does that movie resonate? Is that a better commentary on our current environment? I'm not talking about pandemic environment, but just the political environment more so than Joker? Or is it just? I had my hopes that it would be a great movie to sort of start thinking about the divide in our country, but I haven't actually seen it.
Yeah, so first of all, Joker, I didn't get any message out of Joker,
Right,
so I'm
right.
not sure what you're talking about. I thought Joker was just garbage.
That's what I mean.
Um,
Is like, so what everyone said Joker was supposed to be, right? Is The Hunt actually that movie? What people claim Joker is?
I think The Hunt is just a fun romp that uses the devices of liberal versus conservative people very effectively to where the jokes about it are really fun, but I don't think it's making any sort of statement, to be honest.
And
In fact, it's making more of a statement about cancel culture than it is about politics.
and I have a question. I really really want to watch the movie, but it doesn't have any blood in it or anything, right? Because I'm a little squeamish.
Yeah, not at all.
Okay, good.
Not at all. There's not a scene where a man's eyeball is pulled out with a
Oh.
woman's heel.
All right. Okay. Yeah,
There's
I can't
not
watch
that.
it.
There's not that scene.
I don't think I can watch it. I really wanted
It's-
to because it got banned or it got pulled, right? Basically because it went through the Fox News cycle for like some moment where it said basically like no one had seen the movie yet, but then the Fox News got a hold of it and said it's about what are they called? Not the undesirables. What are they called? What Hillary Clinton
The
called
Great Unwashed.
No. What did Hillary Clinton call awful racist people? And apparently was wrong for doing so.
Deplorables.
Deplorables. It was basically, they were saying people are hunting deplorables, and so Fox basically made a big deal out of it, and it got pulled from theaters.
I liked it because I don't think it takes either side very seriously, which is kind of my political stance.
Yeah.
I live in ignorance. I read or listened to, because my eyes are so bad, I listened to 2 books. One was called Just Mercy, which is a fantastic book. It's about the systemic oppression of black people in the South. Well, actually, in the whole country, to be honest. And it was fantastic. And certainly now is the time to kind of catch on to stuff like that. And then I listened to Acid for the Children, the Flea book, which was not as good as the Anthony. So if you're wondering which Red Hot Chili Peppers book is better, Anthony Kiedis' book Scar Tissue or Flea's book Acid for the Children, you should just listen to or read Anthony Kiedis' book.
Really? Wow. Because Flea seems like he would have had a much more interesting life, right? He was homeless and he's in, what movie is he in? Suburbia, right?
He just had a jazz. His stepdad was a jazz musician. That was sort of his.
Oh.
That's the thing. I listened to both these. I read both these books, and I heard about their childhoods. I got both these guys beat. Right. They didn't have it that bad. I was like, I could tell you some stories, Flea. I mean, this shit. He sits there, complains, and then granted, I was not a good human being as a product of that shitty upbringing. But I'm like, I don't know. Both Kiedis and Flea. I got some stories I could tell. They didn't have it. I mean, they had it bad, but they didn't have it terrible.
Yeah. I'm no Red Hot Chili Peppers fan, so.
I was thinking about when you were talking about the New Day Rising, or was it? It was you, Rick, right? You had cut off the last 3 songs of New Day Rising, and then Jim, you had horribly censored Minutemen's Double Nickels on the Dime. I actually felt like the first 10 songs on Blood Sugar Sex Magic, the Chili Peppers record that kind of broke them, I don't know if you'd say that or not, were actually really good. And then everything after that on that album was shit. So it was like all the way up to Under the Bridge. So right before Under the Bridge starts, it's a really good record.
You've listened to the record recently, or are we going to get an apology next episode where you say, I'm sorry, I said this record was really good, but I realized I listened to it again, and I have to say, there is no good Red Hot Chili Peppers music. I'm waiting. I will wait eagerly for that apology.
I actually did listen to quite a few Red Hot Chili Peppers record as I read the Flea book, or as I in between listenings, I should say. And boy, it was all pretty bad. But yeah, I don't know. I don't want to set myself up for an apology.
So yeah. If you talk about punk funk or funk punk or whatever you want to call it, the Red Hot Chili Peppers are probably the worst example of that.
Well, that's all we have for consumption. I didn't do that much, guys. Any other topics?
Well, what about people's comments about the movie? I stopped looking at them. I did see someone say something about What's Up, Doc not aging well, and I was trying to figure out what that meant.
Stuart M. wrote, dreadfully dated now.
Yeah.
And it got somebody posted a cry. And then Marcus A. says, don't agree. And then Beverly M. says, delightfully dated now to Stuart M.
Yes, that's the whole point. And yeah, so watching a movie that has nostalgia for a previous era also, it's kind of like a double loop.
Yeah, that was my comment. Is it was delightfully dated then, right?
Is-
The
yeah.
movie
Yeah,
was
it was a
dated
throwback
when it came
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. I can't remember what the next movie is, so I'm really excited to find out what it is. I actually have the same excitement as the few listeners who've actually listened to the podcast rather than just commenting on a screenshot of a scene from the movies we watch.
Well, I wrote a speech to announce the next film. I actually did. So I will end on this because it has a bit of a serious tone. So
okay.
our next film is the 1981 Burt Reynolds action thriller Sharky's Machine. And with that announcement, I do want to say that I picked Sharky's Machine over a year ago, and we recorded the episode about a year ago. And the order of our episodes was predetermined well before we started recording the podcast. So it is unfortunate that a gritty police drama is our next episode at this time in history. So we just want to say Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and Rayshard Brooks should all still be with us today. And our hearts go out to their friends, family, and all the people around the world who were impacted by their deaths. We would encourage you all to donate to Black Lives Matter. We do need to change things. It's clear that racism in this country is systemic and it needs to end. It's just enough is enough. We need to turn the corner for all Americans and make sure everybody gets the same rights that we've been given. So our hearts go out to the folks who have lost people over hundreds of years given this situation, and we hope that finally enough is enough.